What's going on? What's going on? This is Phil Jones, Mike Jones, however you guys know me personally and professionally. And today, you guys are tuning into another exciting episode of the Extraordinary Man Podcast. So, today I want to have this little brief, long conversation with you guys about something I think that really needs to be touched down on. So, dating. Where do we even begin? I don't know and I don't understand how people date in the 2020s, but it seems very interesting. Obviously, with a lot of dating sites and sliding into DMs or whatever this thing is that the younger folk are doing, and some of the older folks, I don't know. It's a very weird time, and sometimes I wonder what the future holds when it comes down to how people are dealing with one another. You see, one of the biggest issues that I see, and again, I won't even say an issue, I'll say it's more so of a mild irritation, is the dating podcasts, or a lot of these podcasts that are geared toward women and men and the differences in what they are looking for and stuff like that. And one of the things that led me to make this is because there's a couple of things that I felt personally triggered by, and I just thought I would share a culmination of my thoughts if you guys were willing to hear them. So, I think this will be titled The Good and Bad of the Dating Podcast. Let's try it out, shall we? I'm going to freestyle this and see how it turns out. So, on the positive side of the dating podcast that I noticed is that it sparks the conversation as far as having, I guess, what you would consider meaningful conversation about relations between women and men. Now, people have these ideas about what it is that sound good when it comes down to relationships. And truth be told, there's a lot more to it than just, oh, well, a man has to be this tall, he has to make this much money, he has that, because there still has to be somewhere to account for chemistry and how men and women get along and how they build with one another. I think that a lot of time that's discounted as a value thing when it comes down to how people are dating or how people are mating these days. I would say another thing that I am happy about seeing is the fact that it's not just young people, but it's young people and old people alike, or older people alike, that are having these conversations. So you get kind of a generational understanding about what a man's role was back then and what a woman's role was back in the olden days and what it has relegated itself to modern day. So I do see a lot of room as far as gaining some level of understanding as far as male and female relations and how they all come into play with one another. One of the bad sides to these situations is that there's a lot of delusional expectations on both sides. Number one, when you take into consideration of inflation, and this is kind of for both men and women, is that when you take into account for something like inflation, cost of living, no one person is really the margin of how many people who can independently provide for a household of 3 or a household of 4 is very slim, whereas at one point in time in history it was far more prevalent. And you can look at any basic inflation calculator and you can look at where cost of living and wages kind of tailored off over a period of time. Now, I can't tell anybody that they're wrong for what they expect. I can tell you, though, that you really should take into consideration the fact that we are not in a place to where the majority of people are that. So for me to desire something, it would generally mean on the other side of the spectrum that will require more of you to entertain the smaller number of people who can provide that. Now, when it comes down to the men's side of things, it's like the fit, feminine, submissive. The word submissive just seems to be a trigger word for women these days, and it's like, I don't necessarily know why, but then again, it's like, when you think about the caliber of men that a lot of these women are drawing their experiences from, are these men worthy men to submit to? So when we look at the whole concept of submission. Submission to a husband is a biblical term, or this is a biblical concept. But the part that's missing is the fact that the man submits to God and the woman submits to the man. A lot of times it's like the God part just gets completely taken out of the equation, and we just jump straight into the because I am man, because I am whatever, that you just automatically should be giving me respect, although I may not have earned it. Now, based on whatever metric that you judge a man from, whether it's his finances, whether it's his height, whether it's his good looks, whether it's whatever a woman may be interested in, you have to take into consideration that if you're not it, you're not it. I think that one of the biggest delusions that happen is that some of us have overinflated views of who we are. And we look at ourselves and we think of ourselves in a certain way. And I will argue with almost anybody that I will tell you that you are an average of the culmination of what you attract. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. If you're rooted in some sort of reality, then you take into consideration that a fairly average looking woman who can doll herself up and put herself together, you open the eyes up to men that are more visual, that can see other things about you. Your attractiveness sphere opens up because you allow yourself to accentuate more of your feminine features. That's not to say that you don't have other qualities about you, but that depends on what is the man looking for that you are also looking for. What does he want? For the men, if she wants a six-figure earner and you're not a six-figure earner, trying to convince her to give you a shot is kind of a waste, because you're walking in the door and she may or may not have respect for you because you are not what she's looking for. So she may feel like, I am settling for you. And in the instance that her standards are way higher than the value that she produces, the market will generally adjust itself, and that's really not a problem that I should have. One last thing that I want to say about this, and again, anybody can feel free to jump in, comment however they see fit. Again, I'm speaking from somebody that's closer to 40, that's seen a little bit. Again, I'm not an old man, but I'm not a young man, so bear with me a little bit. One of the things that I've noticed that I think that is the most common aspect of the dating podcast world is that a lot of people are speaking from traumatic events. They're speaking from childhood trauma, fathers not being around, mothers setting the expectation of what a man should be to young men that she's raised, women's views of what a man should be, being based off of something remotely fairy tale and not based off of the reality or the totality of what men actually come as. I think that expectations don't line up with people's realities. And a lot of times it's just like, let me just throw my fishing rod out there as far as I can go. And if the fish that I hook is not big enough, then I'm just going to go and keep throwing my fishing rod out there until I find the fish the size that I want. I think that a lot of people are suffering because there's unresolved trauma. So you don't know how to appreciate a man or a woman who is giving you all that they have to give. They are being all that they are capable of being at this time. And we don't know how to appreciate it. We don't know how to receive those people. We're still struggling with learning how to receive ourselves or our own inadequacies or feelings of inadequacy. And we project those things outward rather than doing the work inward to try to build ourselves to the maximum potential that we deserve to see ourselves at. So a lot of times I'm trying to fill an empty cup with my expectations of what somebody else provides. I'm looking for somebody else to complete me rather than doing the work to build myself to where I feel that I'm acceptable. And then another acceptable product comes together, and then we're solid in ourselves, and then we build and we move from there. When I listen to a lot of people talk, I hear a lot of what they believe that somebody should do, and not based off of what they've actually seen somebody do or things that they can actually look at examples in their lives of what happened. A lot of people that I see on these podcasts or publications, they can't draw to their own mother and father and the love that mom and dad shared within the household. They draw to grandma and grandpa, or they draw to somebody they seen on TV, or celebrities, or various other avenues that may not necessarily be based in the reality of their situation. You know, I hear a lot of times this whole power couple concept of she's got her own, he has his own, we come together and we build this big. It's a great thought. It's great. It's a beautiful idea, but it's not rooted in reality, because a lot of people have not mastered survival. They haven't gotten to the place to where they learned how to just feed themselves and clothe themselves and pay a car note and pay rent or a mortgage on their own without struggling, borrowing, or taking out a payday loan. We haven't gotten to that part yet. But we have these high, grandiose expectations of who should be walking in our lives when we got all this baggage over here. So anyway, these are just a culmination of my thoughts, and I know that I don't have it all. You know, I don't have it all. It's just, I've seen so much of it that I think that there's a bunch of holes that I'm missing, and I don't know if anybody's ever taken the time to look at it from the outside looking in and approach the conversation from the, you know, a lot of these people sound hurt. They sound misled. They sound like they have this incessant need to feel right or feel validated rather than be right and be valid. So that's my time, guys. If you guys agree, let me know you agree. If you don't agree, feel free to post anything that you like. Let me know what you guys think. Let's expand on the topic if you so fit. And with all else, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Peace.